Got to say that we got a supportive community. Eric, we're going to launch a poll here in a second with 2 questions. I was going to write 3, but we ran out of time, so we have 2 questions. And we'll kind of use the answers to those to determine our flow and where we go with everything. So thanks for joining us, guys. This is really intended to be kind of a follow-up webinar for a webinar we did a couple weeks ago, the app deep dive webinar. And we talked about use cases for the app, different features, and we jumped into a little bit of data review, talked just very briefly about the speed trace, and everybody afterwards said, hey, I want to know more just about the speed trace. Let's talk about what it is, how I can learn from it, how we can kind of measure our progress as we go. And so that's what this is intended to be. We'll be talking a little bit about what the speed trace is, what it measures, maybe a little bit about those units of measurement, which is important to know, GPS speed versus vehicle speed, those types of things. We'll talk about specifically how it's done with the Apex Pro product. We'll show examples of that on the screen using the data session that I sent you guys. And we'll kind of go from there based on your answers to the poll. How does that sound for you, Eric?
Beauty, my brother.
Awesome. Have you looked at the data session that the shared session that we have? I think I've sent it to you before because you were actually there when I got this data.
I just got off the call with Ross. He's doing some neat stuff. So you probably sent it. And prior to that, I was on another call. So I'm going to go find that, my man.
Don't make it too much of a priority. It's going to be stuff that we can find in most data sessions. But the reason I shared this session, guys, I sent it in my email, but this data session literally has 2 drivers. One is a very green, very novice level driver and a professional driver in the same data session. So it's a really, really stark contrast between your typical bad behavior speed trace kind of look on the data, and then really, really quality, good looking, good example data. And we don't even have to look at multiple sessions to see both of those things. It's 2 different drivers in the same car. It's probably the best sample session of looking at these being able to overlay speed traces and see just such a dramatic difference in the shapes. So we'll talk a lot about shapes tonight. We'll give everybody about 5 more minutes to join. We're looking for about 17 or 18 folks total. Had a couple people say they could not make it. Yeah, we're ready to get back to the track too, Doug. I'm sure Eric feels the same way. I had every weekend, for the past 6 weeks now, I was supposed to be at the track. So that's tough, but it is what it is. We'll all get through it together. That's why we're doing this stuff. Forget about what's going on and learn something.
Awesome. You want to ask folks to be selfish isn't the right word, but would you like to ask folks to contribute what they'd like to learn?
Sure.
While we're waiting.
Yeah, let's have a little bit of a discussion on learning outcomes. What would you guys like to learn at the end? What's our goal? Your personal goal for yourself. I listed some kind of learning outcomes in the product description, the things that I hope to communicate and hope to leave you with after you've participated with this, or at least some things to start learning and to progress with in the future. But let me know in the chat, and Eric will be moderating the chat and the Q&A tonight. Let us know what you want to learn by using the speed trace. Maybe you want to analyze a particular part of your driving that you think you need to improve. It can be something just like confidence. Maybe you just want to learn speed trace shapes. Maybe you want to learn a little bit about overlaying data with other drivers and what you can really get out of that and what the limitations are. Any of those would be great examples, but let us know. Maybe you're suspicious you might be overslowing. Maybe you think you might not be optimizing the car's braking potential. Anything. Maybe,
which is really a gut feel, right? And what you and I typically hear is something like this. I think I can brake better. And then you and I sort of ask, what does better mean? Well, I think I can. I don't think I'm being hard enough on the brakes. And it could be as simple as that, right? It's a
Yep.
it's a gut feel. It's a I think I'm, but I'm not sure.
Yep.
I think
Absolutely.
Yep.
And all those would be great examples. So folks that just joined us, let us know in the chat. Let us know what you want to learn from the speed trace about your driving, or let us know kind of what some of your goals are. Why are you here? What do you hope to learn? What are your expectations? And then I'm also going to launch a poll here, Eric, and there's 2 questions. First one is, how many sessions do you log data during a weekend? So just kind of how often are you using your device and logging data? And then how often do you review your data during the weekend? And there's some answers. So I'm going to go ahead and launch those. I'm going to change my lighting settings here in the room real quick. And we'll get started here in just a second.
So we want folks to be 100% truthful. This is not this is anonymous, and it's better to have more conservative answers than I'm a badass. So as you guys look at that, think about that, because we want to tweak this effort to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Eric, I will let you aggregate what you're seeing in the chat. Can you see the answers to the poll, Eric? I don't know if you can. That's not a big deal, because I'll do that for my end. All right, well, it's officially 6:30 by my clock, at least. Looks like we've got a little over 50% of the crowd. So that's excellent. Thanks for joining us tonight, folks. This is Eric Meyer and Andrew Rain's radio hour. No, we'll be talking about the speed trace. So here in just a second, while you guys are answering the poll question and letting us know what your expectations are for tonight, what you want to learn in the chat box, we'll go ahead and start just delivering some kind of the introduction to the speed trace. And like I said a few minutes ago, for those of you that weren't here, this is really in response to a bunch of people who jumped onto our app deep dive webinar and said, I loved what we talked about the speed trace. I want to learn more about it. Let's go in more detail. And that's really what this is designed for. So there's several of those folks that are here that kind of drove this to be here. So thank you for being active and letting us know. Awesome. So I'm seeing some responses to the poll, Eric. So we'll
good questions.
Answers to those. Well, yeah. Some guy in Indianapolis helped me with those.
Look at the one from Steve down here. I'm usually back onto gas before the apex, so I need to identify where and how to carry more speed into the corner. That's neat, because not only are you looking at the speed trace, which is what we're going to do, but you got to look on a track map to see where's the apex relative to the speed trace. You got to combine them together.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve, the answer is you need to look at what's happening in the apex, and maybe we can touch on that later, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Let's look at our first polling question, which is, how many sessions do you log data for during a track weekend? 18% of folks said 1 to 2, and about 82%, so 9 out of 11 said that they log data for all sessions. So that's awesome. Bart, thanks for joining us. Answer the polling questions when you can, and let us know in the chat box what your expectations are for the session. What do you want to learn about speed trace? Question number 2. So that's interesting. We got the vast majority of people log data for every session. That's awesome. And there are no wrong answers to these guys. This is just for us to help you. If you don't log any data, that's totally fine. If you want to, but you don't, that's okay. We just need to know kind of where you stand on these. The second question was, how often do you review your data during a track weekend? 50% of folks said, I try to look at data once a day. We had one respondent.
Hey, Andrew, I'd be interested in people to elaborate a little bit more in the chat section. What that means. Is that at the end of the day? Is that at lunch? A couple people put some notes in there. What do you mean by answering that question, please?
Yeah, that's for the folks that said they look at data once a day. Had one person said, I look at it a lot, but I don't know what to look for. Very valid question. I've been there as well. I review data comprehensively at the end of the day. We had 2 people say that. One said, I enjoy data review and know what to look for, but I don't have time. time is a very hot commodity on a track weekend. So we definitely wanted to capture that. You know, a lot of times you're doing multiple things throughout the day. It's really easy to not be able to take the time. Then we had 2 folks say, I review data after every session and get value out of it. Awesome. Yeah, definitely elaborate a little bit for those of you that do look at data once a day. Elaborate a little bit on when that is, so we can kind of understand the logistics of the weekend, and we'll start moving on. Let's talk a little bit about conceptually what the speed trace is. And Eric, as I leave some holes or some questions to be asked, feel free to kind of moderate and probe to get kind of an understanding. But you know, we call speed trace the money channel, and that was something that I believe Roger Cadell from AIM has called it. I've heard Peter Krause refer it as the money channel. And we've talked about, we kind of promoted this webinar by calling the speed trace the money channel. And it's called that because it is really the most valuable, it's where all the information lives. A lot of times we have to go a little bit further and look at what is causing something to happen in the speed trace. But when you ask people that spend a lot of time doing data, they usually will tell you the vast majority of their time is spent looking at the speed trace, and they can get a lot more out of it than you might think. If you're thinking that you need steering position and throttle position and brake position to really get value out of the speed trace, that's simply not true. And I would really encourage you to fully understand all of the possibilities of what the speed trace could be showing you before you start chasing the rabbit, chasing your tail on more sensors, and trying to really expose things in more detail. So we're only going to focus on the speed versus distance graph tonight, which is what we call it in a little bit more official language here. So I'm going to get the iPad screen pulled up so we can look at this sample data session. Guys, don't worry if you can't pull up the session. It's not a big deal. I just wanted you to have access to the data that I was looking at so you could follow along if you like. You can pull up your own data session on your iPhone or your iPad. I'm using an iPad, so there will be some formatting differences from what you'll see on your iPhone. There's going to be some slight differences with just how the data is displayed. So on your iPhone, you'll see the lap list that we're looking at here on the left will be down here where the speed trace is. And you'll either be able to see the GPS image, the speed trace, or the friction circle up here. On the iPad, we've got 2 options for displaying data. So just know that if you're not using an iPad, this might not look as familiar to you. Eric, we got anything in the chat?
I got to jump in here real quick, guys, because you're brand new at this. I'm old. I'm 55, and I find when I log data with my iPad, it is a nice big screen, and I can manipulate more. There's some more features here that Andrew may or may not show us, but if you have a tiny phone and your eyes aren't super great, and you got an iPad at home, bring that sucker to the track, man. It will open up your whole world. It'll make it easier to do what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's way more portable than a laptop as well because you don't have to worry about the hinge. They're a lot more durable. Get a nice OtterBox case. They're $30. You could throw this thing like a Frisbee and it wouldn't have a problem.
And it fits perfectly between your seat and the trans tunnel.
Yeah, it does. Right there to your right. Excellent. Awesome, guys. So this is the sample session that we're looking at. I'm going to go ahead and point a couple of things out before we go into too much more detail, just so that we're all on the same page here. And if you guys were on the App Deep Dive webinar, this is the same data session. So hopefully everything looks really familiar. First of all, we're at Sebring International Raceway. I think we had 2 folks that say that that was one of their tracks they're most familiar with. I like using tracks that are big name, North American tracks for these because, if we haven't seen them, then we've at least watched a race that was at Sebring, or maybe we've played a sim. I'm sure lots of us are doing that right now, or a video game or something where we have some familiarity with the track. But we'll try to take some of the examples that we're going to use and apply those to tracks that you said you're familiar with. So we're not just talking about what we see in the sample session. So feel free to ask questions that are track specific, but just know we'll do our best to relate it back to some of the tracks that you guys are familiar with. On the left side of the screen here, we've got our lap list. What you'll notice about this particular session is that they're 2 different drivers, and they actually swapped out right here on lap 5, where you see this 4-minute lap. So if we go to lap 5 right there, you can see that the car actually pulls in to pit lane. We can actually see that on the GPS satellite image here. So that's going to let us know that there are 2 different people driving the car. And so the reason we're using this as our sample data session is because this first driver, it's actually his dad's car. He doesn't want to damage it. He's extremely timid, and he's, you can tell he's half a minute. He's 30 seconds plus slower than the fast driver. So it's going to be a really extreme example of good and bad examples. Then this fast lap down here.
So it's super great for learning. Super
Absolutely.
great. Easier to see. Yeah.
Yep. You're going to have to take what we're talking about here when we look at these really big different examples, and where your data is probably somewhere in between. It's going to probably lean a little more towards what we're looking at now, which is the pro data, or it's going to lean a little bit more towards the newer driver's data. And that's okay either way. We've all been through the progression of, my data did not look very good for a very long time. So this lap down here is our zinger lap from our pro driver, and you can see immediately that our speed trace, which is on our bottom view, looks different. So let's just toggle back. If you're looking at it, just toggle between lap 2 and lap 7, or maybe lap 3 and lap 7, and just look at the graph on the bottom of the screen right here.
Make sure you look at the y-axis on the far left. That's the speed, because you're going to see a big jump when you switch.
Yep. That's a great point. Thanks for pointing that out, Eric. If you're on an iPhone, guys, this arrow right here, that blue arrow on the right side, you can tap that, and you can toggle the top over to also see the speed trace. So if you're on an iPhone, you're going to have to go over to that second page so you can access the speed trace. If you're on an iPad, you'll be able to look at 2 screens at once. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what the speed trace is. And Eric, as we have questions come in, feel free to throw them at me if they're relevant. Guys, if you have questions, use the Q&A box. That makes it a little easier. Eric, can you see questions in the Q&A box? Quick logistical question. Or is it better for you to have the chat?
Someone kindly put one in there, please.
We'll tap Q&A, guys, and ask a question so we can see if Eric can see it in there.
Steve, thanks. Yes.
Got it? Cool. So if you have questions, guys, ask them in the Q&A box. Chat box is fine as well because Eric will be moderating it, but go ahead and throw them in the Q&A, and Eric will then lob them at me when it's relevant as we kind of go through the presentation here. That sound good to you, Eric?
Money.
Sweet. So first thing we need to talk about on the speed trace, so we're all on the same page here, is what do our axes show? I sent you guys that picture in an email, and it was meant to expose that this horizontal axis is what's measuring distance, and the vertical axis right here is measuring speed. So as the line moves this way, as the graph moves horizontally, that's how we measure distance across the track. So when we see 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, that is meters across the track, starting at the start finish right here. 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters, and then right here, that's as we cross the start finish line again. So that's really simple. Other speed traces you might look at, we'll put that into feet, so that number might look a little bit different. But just so you know what you're looking at here, that's meters across the track. Then we see our vertical axis. So our vertical axis is that y-axis, if we want to think about 10th grade geometry, and that's going to be measuring speed. So these values we see on the y-axis, 0, 40, 60, 80, 100, and 120, that's speed. So like Eric pointed out, if I toggle from lap 2 to lap 7, I see that number change. We have to go on a scale of up to 160 miles per hour for lap 7.
Boy, that's like a plus 40 terminal difference, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a substantial difference. This is in every way a very obvious example about the good and bad.
Let's tell them what we just said. Let's break that lingo down. I just said it, and everybody might be going, what the hell are they talking about? When I just said plus 40 terminal or plus 40 Vmax.
Yep.
Want to go there?
Sure. So Vmax will be the term that we use. Vmax, terminal velocity, terminal velocity. Vmax will be maximum velocity. Those are terms that we're going to use to describe the highest speed that we experience. So when you talk about your high speed, those are terms that you'll commonly hear used. And it's just a fancy way of saying high speed. It's like saying that stock over there is a triple B rated stock, right? If you're a portfolio manager, you know what that means. If you don't know what that means, then it just means that it's not really a great stock, right? Same thing. Terminal velocity, top speed, same thing.
So when you and I are doing that, we're referring to the fact that we're referring to the fact that one guy was had a way faster top speed than the other guy. We could see that really quickly. You want to show them those spots?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just go right here to lap 2. Boom, lap 2. That's the highest. I see the speed trace, these two increases right here, these two tops of the curve. And then if I toggle down to 7, look at that. Look at the number. It literally went from under 120 miles per hour Vmax, 120, draw a line over, to, 140, draw a line over. Look at that, 140 miles per hour, almost 3 times. This is a 911 Turbo S. It's totally stock. This driver that did the 224 is Jade Buford. He is, by all means, a professional driver. Is
this when we were there the other day?
Yeah, this was in January.
That pretty blue Porsche? Yeah.
Yep, blue car.
So there's a gentleman driver who said, I want a reference lap. I know there's more there. I want something to compare, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, Eric, let's take a step in. Now we've discussed a little bit x-axis, y-axis. What do those values mean? First of all, that speed, guys, when you're looking at Apex Pro, that speed is measured by the GPS that's in the device. So that is GPS speed. The speed your vehicle is reporting is usually based off of the vehicle wheel speed, which can be slightly different. So if you're using an OBD2 device to measure speed, it might be slightly different. In our world for Apex Pro, you're always looking at GPS speed, which is usually going to be your more reliable speed. I just think that's important to discuss.
GPS speed is universally accepted by all motorsports as accurate.
Yep, absolutely. That's going to be your benchmark for everything, no matter what data system you might be using. Let's talk a little more about the analysis perspective, Eric. So we come off track, we're looking at our speed trace, and we know it's the money channel. That's where we need to go. What do we need to look at in order to make some decisions? And if you guys were on the previous webinar we did where we briefly touched on this, and maybe you watched the speed trace deal that we did with Matt Romanowski a couple weeks ago, also did one with Peter Kraus where we talked about this. Eric, we're always looking at the top of the speed trace first. The top of the speed trace.
And those are usually the sort of the big long straights that lead to braking, the significant braking. Maybe some people call it, your DE program might call it threshold braking. That's the first place I go.
Yep.
First place you go.
Absolutely. And guys, if you're looking at a different track, I know a couple of people said Road Atlanta, you won't see as many of these like, let's call it a wave, of these crests of waves, because there's not as many corners. Sebring has a lot of turns. There's 17 turns. Road Atlanta only has 12. So it's going to look a little different. The speed trace might not necessarily look exactly like this for every track. Every track is going to create a slightly different looking speed trace. Now, when you get to be a really proficient driver and you're looking at a ton of data and speed traces, most pro drivers can look at a speed trace and tell you what track it is without seeing the track. And that means that they're very familiar. It's almost a universal language. If I were to show my buddy Robbie Foley a speed trace from some track that he might have driven once, I guarantee you he could just immediately tell me which racetrack that is, or at least be within 2 or 3 tracks, because he's so intimately familiar with the shapes. It's not necessarily the granularity of the numbers yet, it's just the shapes. So with that in mind, when you're looking at your own data, just know it's going to look a little bit different. But you should be able to take exactly what we talk about and apply it to the data from your own racetrack. A couple of people said they're familiar with NCM. NCM is a long 23-turn track. You're going to see a lot of ups and downs on the speed trace, a lot more busy than this even. It's pretty hectic looking at a speed trace from NCM. So what I would recommend, guys, is just a simple tip for looking at learning the speed trace. I would start with a track that has as few number of corners as possible. So if you frequent tracks like, let's say you go to Mid-Ohio, NCM, Autobahn, and Gingerman, I'd probably start with Gingerman. I'd probably start with whatever track has 10 or 12 corners, so it's easier to look at. Does that make sense, Eric?
You bet.
Just something that I think is kind of helpful and insightful when you're looking at data to begin with. The first thing that we look at on the speed trace are the crests, the tops. And what we're asking ourselves is that an aggressive transition from accelerating to braking or not? So how do we know that? Well, when we talk about the speed trace, distance is across the horizontal axis. That means that when the speed trace is going up, it's gaining speed as we move across the track, right? So the speed trace doing this is accelerating. So that's on the right pedal, right, Eric? The gas pedal, the go pedal. If the speed trace is doing this, going down, then we're on the stoppers. We're on the brake pedal. So going up, gas pedal, going down, brake pedal. If the speed trace is flat, that usually means that we're at partial throttle, right here.
Can I repeat what you said in a slightly different way because everybody learns differently?
Let's hear it.
Cool. Guys, the yellow arrows are the point of your driving where you're getting ready to take your foot off the accelerator and go to brake and go to brake hard. And this step that we're doing right now, the number one analysis step, not the number one biggest of all time, but the first one and the easiest one to see is what does it look like? What's our efficiency from transitioning from throttle to brake? That's what we're looking at for high-speed corners. So if you're a note taker, you're an engineer, you're very detail-oriented, step one is what am I doing in high speeds when I go to brakes? Take it away, Mr. Rains.
Alrighty, sorry, I just pressed the wrong button and deleted the chair. Deleted the screen share. I saw in the chat that someone requested more screen time for Eric's cat. So Larry's getting really popular.
Larry cat.
Absolutely, Eric. So anytime we see the crest of the speed trace, that is when we're accelerating, about to go to the brake pedal. So somebody mentioned confidence. The first part of confidence and the way you tell if you have confidence is the shape of the top of the speed trace. If you are braking with confidence, you're going from wide open throttle transitioning to braking hard and quickly and assertively, you're going to get what we call the sawtooth shape, which is the top of these right here. And I want you to quickly, I overlaid these two laps. We'll talk about that more in a second and what that means and how to do it. But what I want you to look at here is the difference, particularly where you see this first yellow arrow and the red shape. Take a look at the difference.
Look at turn one, brother. That's a nice shape difference.
There you go. Turn one. Excellent. Are we seeing that? Go ahead and look at your own data with that too as well. Does it look more like the red line or does it look more like the blue line? When we talk about confidence.
What you're talking about is it round, or is it like a really acute angle?
Yep.
Right?
And it's most likely
angle.
Exactly. It's most likely that it's somewhere in between. All right. It's usually not going to be as dramatic as Jade's, and it's usually not going to be as apathetic as the red line. I'll be completely honest with you. Most of us attack the brake pedal pretty decently because we know we're supposed to, but sometimes we don't quite use it assertively enough. So you're probably going to see a shape that's not quite as sharp as the blue and not quite as smooth as the red. All right, we want the sawtooth shape, which is that blue shape. So guys, if you have 5 minutes between sessions, you're at a new track, you're trying to gain confidence, you're struggling with, am I using the brakes? Am I slowing the car down quickly enough? All you're looking for is, do I have a sawtooth shape at the top of my speed trace? Does it look more like the blue? And if it does, that's great. That's what you want. We can go work on other stuff. If it doesn't, then you need to work on being assertive with your brake application. So that's where we take the analysis into a little bit more of a coaching perspective. Okay, now I know that I'm not assertively going to the brake pedal. I might be coasting. What we're seeing, I'll get rid of all these annotations. This red line and this red line are showing us a little bit of coasting or partial throttle or maintenance throttle before the driver actually applies the brakes. All right, Eric, do you want to move on to the bottom of the speed trace? Anything else you want to cover there?
Yeah, guys, in almost all cases for the high speed ones, right? The 1, 2, 3, there's at least 4. those are the ones where the objective is to really attack it and make that an acute angle. That's the desired shape for those high-speed braking areas. To put that another way, you know those first corners that you have a lot of high speed and you're going, holy F, I am hauling the mail, and you're a little bit frightened, and it's okay to say that because we've all been there. Those are usually the ones that we're not attacking the brake pedal. So if you have an emotional fear of, hey man, I had a really bad day at that corner again and again, my ABS went out, I just don't like it, I'm not a good judge of braking markers, go there, because chances are it might be round in shape, which means opportunity.
Yep.
And if we look at turn 1 and the round, can you totally zoom in on turn 1, brother? So Mr. Rains zoomed in a little bit, and turn 1 would be far to the left. Yep. So here is, yep, look at that. So here is the red car, and will you put the cursor where the red stops accelerating, Mr. Rains? Your which looks like, 150 feet or so?
Yep. Right there.
If you look at where the yellow arrow is pointing, that red driver started slowly lifting off the throttle while the blue driver kept in it.
Yep.
That's what those shapes mean. Think about that.
And Eric, we can measure that too. So if I put 2 arrows on here and I go, okay, this speed trace is flat from this first yellow arrow to this second, and then I come down here and I grab this slider at the bottom and I move the crosshairs, the data crosshairs right here, I'm going to stop it where I see that first arrow pointing, which is approximately where the speed trace gets flat. And I'm going to look at this value right here. You see that, Eric? 121.
Everybody see that on the far left?
Far right?
Excuse me, far right.
So Eric's forgotten left and right during quarantine. We've learned that. What's next? No, I'm just kidding. So 121 meters through the track is what we're looking at from the start-finish line, which is going to be right here. And then I'm going to take that. So 121 is that value, and I'm just going to slide.
110 miles an hour, 113?
Yep, to 303. So this red driver from 121 meters through the track to 300 meters. So that's, 180 meters? This driver was essentially maintaining speed and not accelerating. That's an enormous, that's what, 2 football fields?
Yeah.
Almost? That's an enormous amount of space.
At 113 miles an hour.
Yep, at 113, while we see the blue driver just continues accelerating.
Everything it's got, I'm certain.
Eric, to hit on the thing that you mentioned, you said having an emotional challenge or thinking about a corner that you really struggled with and seeing sometimes that means you had that curvy top on the speed trace. If you ever turn the wheel, guys, and you're turning in and you're getting into the corner and you're having to squeeze more brake pedal, or you're just going, ooh, I don't know about that. A lot of times that feeling, if you're just not comfortable, a lot of times that feeling starts with not attacking the brake pedal enough. And when we say attacking the brake pedal, we mean if our hands are straight and we're going from wide open throttle to braking, bam, hit that brake pedal pretty dang hard, as quickly as your car will let you.
Hey, Rains, let's role play on this. Ready?
Sure.
I'm a new guy and I'm not attacking the brake pedal, and you're sitting right seat, right? What are you telling me as I'm going into the same corner?
Yeah, I'm saying, hey, more pressure on the brakes, more pressure on the brakes, more pressure on the brakes. I might even squeeze your shoulder and say more on the brake pedal, right? Give me more. Something really simple like that. The thing that I find the reason
pretty normal, isn't it? It's normal for
extremely
people in a very fast, usually the fastest braking zone where you have the most brakes is where the most opportunity is. Which, by the way, that's what we're going to right now. The very first thing, number one thing.
Yep, very normal. Another strategy to prevent that curvy top on the speed trace and get right to the point. So first session of the day, tires are warm. We're starting to get our brain acclimated to being on track. We don't want to waste any time having to teach ourselves to, hey, I haven't been on track in 6 months because of this quarantine crap, and now I got to go back and attack the brake pedal. Well, if we drive on the road every other day, every third day to the grocery store now, and we're squeezing the brake pedal as we do on the road, we don't attack the brake pedal on the road because it's not comfortable, then we kind of have to relearn it on the track. So what I might consider is there's some places that you drive in a daily routine in and out of an area where there's not a whole lot going on. You're coming to a stop sign, a safe place where you can stop aggressively from 30 miles an hour. All of us can do that. And I don't mean necessarily ABS threshold, but just teach your brain off the gas on brake. Boom. It happens fast. It's assertive. It's aggressive. You'd be surprised if you do that 10, 20, 30 times before you go to the track, the weeks leading up to it, you'll see the curvy tops of your speed trace start to become a more sawtooth shape sooner. I find that's an effective tool. It helps me. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the bottoms of the speed trace. We've talked, Eric, you and I've talked a lot about identifying corners. Are they fast? Are they slow? Because that changes the shape that we're going for in the speed trace. Before we talk too much about that, let's talk about how we decide or how we know where on the track we are on a speed trace. Because I think that's a really important thing to understand. We can't.
It's hard. It's when you first look at it, you can't make the connection. It's normal.
It's hard.
Everybody's like that. Unless you look at graphs all day, you're in manufacturing, you run a CNC machine, you're in finance. It's hard.
Yep, absolutely. It's tough. And if I were to take and let's say I cover up the track, all right, I do something like this. These shapes aren't really working for me. I cover up the track and I move my speed trace ticker. I move this to right here. Eric, even if you know Sebring well, could you tell me without having done some prior research to understanding the speed trace, could you tell me what corner that is? It's pretty tough, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I know this track.
You know this track. I know you do. But say that you don't know what the speed trace looks like. So let's talk really quickly about tips and tricks for looking at the speed trace and correlating it with the track. And I'm not going to use Sebring specifically as the example because we're all from different parts of the country looking at our own data. But there's a couple things we want to look at on the speed trace. First of all, where is the speed the highest? Okay, and second of all, where is the speed the lowest? That's going to give us an indication as to where it is on the track. If you know the track and you go, oh, wow, that's a big, fast part of the track. Look at this long acceleration, high top speed to a lower top speed. Ooh, I know Sebring. That kind of seems like that back section where you're on the throttle in a straight line for a long period of time. Does that make sense, Eric?
Absolutely. Every track has a couple really long straights, and they're really the most easiest thing to
identify.
Yep.
If you're looking at Road Atlanta guys on a speed trace, you're going to see this guy right here, this general shape, and it's going to be like a third of the speed trace right here, like that. It's going to be really obvious where that back straightaway is at Road Atlanta. If you're looking at somewhere like Barber, it's going to be a little harder. Barber Motorsports Park, you don't really have a super long straightaway.
There's a lot of this, right?
Yep, you see a lot of. So in that case, you're going to have to work a little harder. The second thing you want to do is identify the slow places. This corner right here where I've got the crosshair stopped, pretty slow. I know Sebring, and I can go, okay, so this is the beginning of the lap, and braking, and I go through this little left-right section, and now I'm on the gas, and I brake. Oh, okay, that's under the bridge. That's turn 7. That's kind of how I walk through it. I know that's specific to Sebring, but just walk through the lap of your own home track and try to not look at the GPS image and also know where you are on the speed trace. Because it's one of those things, if you constantly lean on the crutch of looking at the satellite image, you're going to always have to have it there to understand. If you just saw a speed trace in isolation, you wouldn't be able to know where that is on the track. That's a skill that you want to have. It makes life a lot easier and makes you less dependent. Does that make sense, Eric?
Yeah, so here's what I like to do with you guys, right? I'd like everybody right now to think of a track, the track that you know the most, and I want to ask yourself 2 questions. What is the slowest corner on the track, and what is the fastest straightaway fastest straightaway? What's your fastest, when you're looking down at your speedometer and you go, dude, this is the fastest I'm going. Think about that for that track right now. Where are they? Just think about that in your head. Now think of another track, right? A different track. Where is that slowest corner? Might even be a second gear, the one that you might hate. And then also, where's the fastest top speed, the VMAX, your terminal. Think that as well. Now look down at the graph of Sebring on the computer screen and do the same thing. Where is the slowest corner? Where's the fastest top speed? It's basically what you're doing. You're bridging a visual of something that you know with, oh, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yep. And you can't, that's an excellent way to do it, Eric. And I would recommend doing this very consistently. And I'd probably take for granted that I spend a lot of time thinking about this. And when I'm looking at data, I go through that thought process of having to sort out where on the track am I on the speed trace. The first time I went to NCM, I actually hadn't driven NCM. And I'd looked at enough speed traces that eventually I actually was going the other way around. I got out on the track and I was going, oh, this is that real slow corner on the speed trace. You know, this is that real fast corner on the speed trace. I was going the other way. So it can really help you learning a new track, right? If you have some good data and you haven't been to that track before, knowing how to do this can be really, really, really advantageous.
First thing you need to do to get over the hump is just keep looking at it again and again. Look down at the blue line where he has yellow arrows. Lift your head up and say, where is that on the track? Look down at the blue line, lift your head up. Where is that on the track? Just keep going back and forth. Take 15 minutes to do that. Maybe even commit some things to memory like, oh, okay, I was going 100 there. Just make the relationship, make the connection.
All right, guys. So keep thinking about that because I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up on the mic right now. No, I'm going to I'm going to put arrows on the GPS image that correlate with the arrows that I've got on the speed trace. You probably already figured this one out because that's where I stopped the crosshairs. So that's where the blue dot is, but that's turn 7. And then for this second one, Vmax is going to be right here on the back straightaway. So I hope that was close to what you were thinking, but I would quiz yourself. If you have an iPad, pull up this exact screen that I have and move the slider around and go, where is that on the track? Take it to where I've got that pink arrow pointing. Yep, there it is. Pink arrow, pink arrow. Cool. Take it to where I've got the blue arrow point or the yellow arrow pointing. Cool. Okay. I know this seems, when we're talking about it and we're going, know where you are on the speed trace on the lap. That seems obvious, and it is, and it's not an overtly complex concept. But people that I talk to over and over again, they have to discuss this before we go further, because there can be confusion about where I actually am on the speed trace, and that's the last thing that we want. We want to know exactly where we are because it's important to know: am I in turn 7 or am I in turn 10? And I don't want to get those mixed up. Yeah, so that's an important exercise. Take that one home with you. Do some practice at your own track. Make sure you know how to correlate where you are on the lap. It's that simple, and don't rely on the GPS satellite image to always be there. Even though if you're using the Apex app, one of the great things about it is it always can be. But we want to understand fundamentally why, right? And to do that, we don't need that GPS image right there in front of us. Eric, let's talk a little bit about bottom of the speed trace and some shapes that we have on the bottom.
Why are we talking about that, right? This is a big global story. What do we went to the top. Yep. Let's break it down and make it super simple of why we're going to the bottom.
Yeah, so we talked about the shape of the top of the speed trace, and we determined that curvy is bad. That means we might be coasting. We're not accelerating all the way to the brake zone. We want it to be aggressive. The next place to go is the bottom or the trough of the speed trace. That's because the trough of the speed trace is going to be at or near the apex of the corner. So it's going to be the slowest part of the corner. And how we slow to that speed and then how we accelerate away from that speed is extremely important to our lap time, to how the car behaves. Are we comfortable? So we really want to look at the bottom of the speed trace because that's where that's where the car's going the slowest in the corner. And that's usually close to the apex of the corner.
Mr. Rains, at about the 2100 meter mark on the speed trace, you're actually in a corner, 2100 meter.
Yep.
Could you really open that dude up big time? Like super open it up. I want everybody to understand the bottom of one of these speed traces we're talking about, really what we're showing here.
How about that? Might take a second for it to reflect on the screen share.
Would you show from where we're off the brakes to where we're braking, and when we're off the brakes, and when we're at apex and we start picking up the throttle? Would you just walk through all of that?
Has what I changed on the iPad changed on your end yet? I still see the same view. Gotcha. It might take a second. I'm wirelessly connected, so it's relying on my Wi-Fi, which is never good, especially right now when everybody and their brother and their mother is using it. So Eric, we are accelerating here. We are braking. I'm going to change the color with the arrows. When we see the peak and that sawtooth shape, we are now hard on the brakes. We're still hard on the brakes. And something that we want to look at here is when the shape of the slope starts to change, that's important. That's something that we want to call out. So we're going to see a slope change in this area down here. So I would venture to...
Let's go way back up to the top. Because guys, if you don't get this, this is really foundational. Some people nod their heads, and I'm like, you're just nodding your head. You don't really know what we're talking about. We're at the very top of that blue, where the most left yellow is. That's where we're going from gas to brake. And we're pushing on the brake pedal. We're pushing in on it really, really, really hard.
Yep, absolutely. Let me reboot this share real quick and see if I can get it so that I can expand the screen.
Okay.
1 second. Yeah.
You're not wearing your vest.
No, it got too warm for the vest.
Somebody asked a question about his mom's iPad.
I was about to say, I haven't heard it yet. All right, here we go. We're back up and running. It's not my mom's iPad. This is my iPad. It belongs to the business. Okay, cool. So we're looking at the speed trace again here. Same place we were looking before. And now I've got it set up. Actually, on my iPad, I can see the top, but the screen share is not wanting to change. So we've got our braking occurrence somewhere up here. There we go. There we go. So we're braking right here, where we've got the green arrow. And then like Eric said.
Can you zoom in on that part of the track too? As in other words, on the track map, right?
Yep.
So he's using the iPad feature, right? And we're zooming in to learn this.
So I already did. It's just going to take it a second. There we go.
There we go.
So this is where the crosshairs are. So why don't we start walking through with the crosshairs here. So as the car approaches, let's say right here, this is going to be at the top right here, right? Where we're braking. The thing that we're trying to zero in on is this is a slow corner. What do we want the shape of it to look like in an ideal situation on the speed trace? So why don't we do that in the chat, guys? Let us know in a slow corner. Do we want it to look like
let's just walk them through here so they can see this, guys. This is really important to make that same connection. Can you slowly move that blue cursor and let it just roll in?
Sure. My bottom screen, so you know, is not catching up.
It's a little delayed.
Let me try to get it back.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to pull out of here.
So guys, where I'm going with this is every time you see that bottom of when we were calling the bottom of the speed trace, not the top, but the bottom, there's a story there, and it's relative to the shape of the bottom of that, not the magnitude, not the mile per hour, but the shape is important for basically kind of 2 to 3 different kind of corners. And you're going to see that right here. So the bottom of that V right there that he's going to, look at that location on the track map and ingrain that in your head. You need to be thinking, that looks like the apex.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, it is. And if that's the apex at the bottom of that V, can you guess what those other two at 3,000 meters and 3,600 meters is? Keep in mind, this is a pro driver, and he's really, really good. So I'm pretty damn sure that's on the apex by plus or minus 18 inches.
Yeah.
Jade's good.
And Eric, we had someone mention the comment about being unsure if you're overslowing or not. This is a good start to learning, am I overslowing, based on where your slowest speed or your minimum speed is compared to where the apex of the corner is. And in this case, in a slow corner, what we're looking at is his minimum speed is right at what we would call the geometric apex of this corner. And this is actually more than a 90-degree corner. You're seeing he has to wrap it around. So the apex is really, really late. But guys, if you think that you might be overslowing, a lot of times you might have your minimum speed before the apex of the corner. And then you're back on the throttle soon and you can accelerate out easily. So if you see your speed trace start to accelerate, drag your slider down here, park it on the apex of the corner at your slowest speed, park it on the slowest speed of your speed trace, and then see where the dot is on the track relative to where you think the apex should be on the track map. And that should tell you something. If it's if that dot is parked well before the apex in a slow corner, you're probably overslowing and going back to throttle early. Does that make sense, Eric? Is that easy to follow?
Let's really drill down in there and look at. You want to go the other driver on the same spot?
So there's a couple things that we see here, Eric, that are interesting. One, he is going to throttle sooner. You can see the speed trace start to accelerate sooner. But two, I can also see a massive difference in the shape. He's got like this curve at the bottom where the other driver did not. The other driver had a much more aggressive shape. Just look at those differences there.
I want everybody to know that we're really looking into the shapes of the bottom of these curves. It's literally like I'm looking down, almost like with a microphone. See that little bent? See these little tiny nuances? You gotta really show that really, really close, Mr. Rains. So if you're just looking at it globally or generally, you'll miss it. Pretend like you have a scope of a sniper rifle from far away and you're looking for, that really tiny target like they have on the movies. They're looking for the button on the general's, the whatever.
What's this telling me, Eric? When I look at the speed trace difference that I'm seeing right now, what's the shape of this speed trace say that the other one doesn't necessarily say?
Can you throw them both up there?
Sure.
Want everybody to see this.
Yeah, we've covered this before. That we can overlay laps. So I'm going to select this lap as my first lap, and then I want to overlay this slower lap. I'm going to tap and hold. So I'm going to press my finger down and hold until it appears, and that's going to give me 2 laps. So now we've got them both overlaid on the speed trace down there, Eric.
So would you say that on the speed trace on the bottom, we're exactly that little blue vertical line that the cursor there, would you say we're exactly at the minimum speed there?
No, I would not. I'll drag it to the minimum speed.
Okay. Guys, what is that location? If you said apex or damn near in and around apex, you'd be correct. Remember, the apex out is where you're opening the wheel and you're adding throttle. Take a look at the speed trace down there on the bottom. Where are they going to throttle? Right there.
Yep.
Right? Especially the blue car. Look at the red car. Very tentative. Going to throttle at a slower rate and farther down the track.
Yep. Look how distinct. See, I'm backing the cursor off just so we can look at these shape differences here, Eric, because they're pretty distinctly different.
You want to circle where you're looking? Yeah, brother.
So what I'm seeing is an aggressive V kind of shape. There's a little kind of hook on it, and then I see that kind of curvy more U-looking shape. And exactly what you said, the red driver in this case is being tentative, whereas the blue driver is going back to throttle really assertively. So there's a couple things I noticed right off the bat. The blue driver's a faster speed, right? It's higher up.
How
It
much?
never goes quite as slower.
You have that feature on your, yep.
Yep, not substantial, but it's about 3 miles per hour. It actually is pretty substantial. But so what I'm looking at is over here where I put the green arrows. That's our speed difference at this point on the track, 35 miles per hour versus 32 miles per hour. So the blue driver's 3 miles per hour faster. He's got more of that V shape, which is good, meaning he's more aggressive getting out of the corner. It accelerates faster. And he also spends very little time because of the V shape. That means that he's only spending a marginal amount of time at the slowest speed, whereas this other driver is not.
This is very, very important, gang, if you're listening. When you hear Mr. Rain say the V shape is desirable and it's good for really, really, really slow corners only. Slower corners only. You want it, a V shape is desirable. We're going to go to another corner in a little bit and show you why it's not desirable because of how the red guy drives. The red guy actually has a rounded, or what we'll call a U shape. The blue guy is coming in and he's braking and he's getting all his business done. Slow corner. He's turning the car and he's going back to the juice. Look at the slope of the blue line of the speed as it leaves the corner. It's freaking straight up, man. That dude's on the juice. He is rocking. That's what I see when I look at that. I want to help you guys see that. It's easy to see when you're comparing these gross differences of a super hotshot pro with a bunch of IMSA trophies and track records to this guy's got a $160,000 car and he doesn't know what he's doing with it.
Yeah. So Eric, we'll go to a faster corner here in a second and talk about a different shape, like you said. But real quick, let's just cover again why we are looking for a V shape in a slow corner, and also what is a slow corner. And we're closing in on an hour here, so we'll be pretty brief. But a slow corner can be defined in a lot of different ways. But what I think about it is it's usually second or third gear in almost all situations. And the reason we want a V shape, there's a couple reasons, but I think about it as when we're going slow, we're not going to be producing a fast lap time, right? Fast lap times are created by being at high speed and a high average speed. So when we're at a slow speed, we only want to be at that slow speed for as little time as possible. Also, if anyone comes from an autocross background, you know how assertive you have to be with the car at slow speed to get the car to turn. You really have to be using
a lot of wheel input.
A lot of wheel input. At slow speed, we really have to use that release of the brake pedal to turn the car. We have to be more assertive. We can use the throttle to help complete the car turning on a rear-wheel drive car. We have to be more aggressive with our inputs, and that creates a V shape in these slow-speed corners. So in this corner, Jade probably turned the wheel pretty quick, right, and released the brake, and the car turned, and then he went, right, and that produces a V shape. So just fundamentally think about it. We got the cat cam going. Fundamentally think about it as a V shape means I'm spending as little time as possible at slow speed. Let's talk about a faster corner, Eric, and then we'll wrap some of this stuff up. And then actually, we got one more thing to talk about here, and that is the hockey stick shape in a slow speed corner. And I'll send a note to you guys. I actually did an entire Facebook Live session with Matt Romanowski from trailbrake.net about trail braking. And the hockey stick shape is a pretty advanced thing to look for in your speed traces.
You can actually see it in the bottom of Jade's and the blue one in your green circle there.
You can. You absolutely can. The hockey stick shape actually basically shows us that we're trail braking. So if this is our speed trace, I'm going to draw right here on the left side of the screen. That's our braking of our speed trace. I'm going to change the color so it makes a little more sense. Let's call red braking. That's hard deceleration. I'm on the binders. I'm almost at the ABS. As we approach the corner, if the speed trace starts to do this right here, that's what we call the hockey stick shape. And that means that we are releasing the brake as we turn, which is trail braking. And that's a good thing. And we want to see that in slow corners. And
Will
Eric,
you,
slow corners.
Will you kindly put where Jade starts doing that inside the green circle?
Absolutely. Right there.
You want to put the actual cursor there and show him on track where he starts doing that?
Oh, right there.
Tell a story, brother. Tell a story.
Yeah, so he's been threshold braking because he's approaching the corner at almost 140 miles per hour.
The blue line.
The blue line. This is a threshold brake corner, so we weighed the anchor. We're slowing the car down as fast as we can. At this point on the track, our apex is about right. Let's see, I'll get this one right. About right here. It's really late because it's more than a 90-degree corner. At this point, Jade is needing to turn in, but he still has a few more miles per hour to slow down. So we start to turn the wheel, and as soon as we turn the wheel, that means we have to release the brake pedal. So now the car starts to rotate into the corner. In this particular corner, releasing that brake and turning the wheel has to help the car rotate so that you don't have to add a ton of steering and slow yourself down. So that's what that hockey stick is showing us that he's doing. He's turning in, he's releasing the brake. The car is actually creating a little bit of yaw. And this is actually fairly dramatic right here because this is a four-wheel drive 911, all-wheel drive car, in which case you have to be pretty assertive because it's gonna probably want to understeer a little more. And that's kind of the story that I see there. I see a pretty quick brake release and a quick aggressive turn of the wheel, and that slows the car down a few more miles per hour, and then he's off to the races after that.
Pretty amazing to see all of that within that stupid little blue line, isn't it, guys? The more you do this and the more you just look into stuff, the more you go, aha, aha. And you can do it with other people's data. You just start reviewing it, practice, and go, I see it.
Yep, absolutely.
In this particular case, it's a very slow corner, right? And you're looking for if that trail break occurred. We know that our reference data, the blue guy, is really, really good. So in the slow corners, we were looking for that hockey stick. Sure enough, it was there.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, I'm going to add a little more color to what a slow speed corner is, and then we'll talk about a high speed corner, and then we'll all wrap up. So I'm going to draw a line right here at 60 miles per hour. And I think most data gurus, most analysis-driven folks with motorsports data would agree that if the slowest part of the corner, if the speed at the apex, the minimum speed is below 60 miles per hour, we want a V shape in our speed trace. But as the corner gets faster, we want a more obtuse.
Say that again for people who are taking notes and are digesting it. This is a big deal.
Minimum speed below 60, minimum speed less than 60 equals V shape. That's good. That's a general rule of thumb. That's not 100. I mean, this is an art that we're talking about. We're putting some objective numbers to an art. So keep that in mind, that there are always ways, there are always gray areas for these things. But in general, the slower the corner, especially below 60 miles per hour, the more of a V shape we want to see. So that begs the question, Eric, am I just overslowing? What if it's a 55 mile per hour corner? I'm going 55, but I could be going 75, and then I should have a U shape. There's some gray there, right? You have to, that's a hard question. We're not going to answer it all right now.
Let's stay away from the in-between part.
Yeah.
We go to the dramatic U, right?
Exactly.
Dramatic U.
We'll go look at a U-shaped corner, which is going to be a high-speed corner. So just like when we talk about V-shaped corners and wanting to spend as little time at low speed as possible, when we talk about high-speed corners, we want to spend as much time at high speed as possible. So think about it this way. This is a hard way to start thinking, but if you can start having your mindset do this, it's really powerful. How can I slow down as little as possible? Right? Not how can I brake as late as possible? How can I slow down as little as possible? How can I spend as much time at high speed as possible? How can I slow down at a slower rate? Does that make sense, Eric? Yep. I think that's a critical way to look at a fast corner. So let's look at a U-shaped corner. And I'm going to use turn 1 at Sebring as the example. So when we're thinking fast corners, think about your home track, NCM, turn 5, turn 16. If we're talking Road Atlanta, this is going to be pretty much everywhere. Turn 1, the S's. Turn 6 is pretty fast. Pretty much everywhere except for 7.
Turn 1, Mid-Ohio. Yeah.
Turn 1 in Mid-Ohio. Let's see, VIR, all the S's, the lower S's and the uphill S's. Turn 10, South Bend to VIR.
Yep.
Lots of places like that. I saw some people said in NJMP. I don't know NJMP super well, so I'd hate to offer too much there. Think of a fast corner. Think of a place where you're going, ooh, I'm just scrubbing the brakes a little bit of brake.
Pucker factor. You might even say, man, I could go through there faster somehow, but I don't know how.
Absolutely. Barber, this is the kink. This is turn 12. Those places turn 1 at Barber, fast. So we're going to look at turn 1 at Sebring. So we're storming down the front straightaway, accelerating hard, going under this big old bridge. Right, there's a bridge right here. It says Chevy on it. And we're braking for turn 1. So let's identify at first where it is on the speed trace. There it is on the map. If this is the start finish, we're accelerating, and then we start braking, then our first corner is this guy right here. That's turn 1. Let's put our crosshairs there. This is a big fast corner, and we want a U shape in our speed trace. We do not want a V. So Eric, our slower driver here on the red lap, he doesn't have a V. I'll give him that. But what do you notice about his speed trace, Eric, this red lower speed trace that is a big no-no in the world of speed traces?
Dude, there's so much story right there. There's some crazy, actually, who asked that before over here, and it was Steve. I'm usually back onto gas before the apex, so I need to identify where and how to carry more speed into the corner. Steve, that's an awesome question. It has to do with this exactly right here. Repeat Steve's question. I'm usually back onto the gas before the apex, so I need to identify where and how to carry more speed into the corner.
Absolutely. And Doug Francis also asked, is there a hockey stick there? There is a little bit of a hockey stick here. That's a fantastic question to be asking. And he's seeing the hockey stick right here on the blue line. So Eric, I think the story that you're telling and the question that you just asked is what we're seeing with that red line. This driver, let's tell the story that we're seeing with the red driver here. I'm going to remove the annotations. We're talking the red lap. He's accelerating. See that curvy top on the speed trace? That's a big old coast. That's a release slowly off the gas. We got some hard braking. I'll zoom in a little bit more so we're looking at this a little tighter. I want to keep the whole thing in frame. Got some hard braking right here. And then at about 60 miles per hour, the speed trace actually gets flat. It's flat for quite a while, right? Very flat. And this is well before the apex. So Eric, look at this. See where our green arrow is down here? That's where on the track this driver starts to squeeze back to throttle.
You can see it in the red. It's starting to go up just a little bit, right? It's starting to go up. So right there, he's back on the throttle.
Yep, way before the apex. Way before the apex, where we can see in Jade's lap, he doesn't start to accelerate until this point. Let's slide forward and see where Jade starts to get on the gas.
Guys, I really like when you put the cursor on the apex. I really like that as a habit. And then you put the cursor on the apex and then you look to the right and the left. Everything is relative to the apex. So if we look in the red lap down there, look on the cursor and look how far to the left that red line has parked it. And then what's he doing from where the green and the red are touching? The green arrow and the red, from there all the way to the apex. He's not still slowing down. He's actually going the same and slightly speeding up. He overslowed.
Big time.
Whereas if you look at the blue car, look where the minimum speed occurs. He braked all the way to that apex, and you can see the hockey stick that I think it was Doug possibly who mentioned that. And then he's going back onto the throttle, the blue one. All you're looking to do is connect that blue line and the blue dot and the location of that blue dot at the apex.
Yep, absolutely.
The story is right there. Just keep looking back and forwards. And me personally, I say it out loud and I talk about it, or get with a buddy like Rains, and we do exactly what we're doing here right now.
Yeah. We probably actually did this at Sebring this day, right after I ripped the heat shield off my rental car and right before the turbo inlet hose on Eric's car exploded and he had to limp it home or decided to come apart. So
remember that guy at Starbucks with all the languages?
Yeah, there's some good stories in that trip. So this first green arrow points at a part of the speed trace where it's flat, and that's what Eric said. He's going, hey, what is this guy doing right here? Because we see the good example. Eric, let me ask you something. Is a fast driver, a pro driver speed trace, is it ever really flat? Probably not. There are some very rare instances where that's a possibility. That's a possibility.
It's got to be a track feature that require or makes that happen.
Or a fast corner in a high downforce car with not a lot of power, where you're turning the wheel and you're on the throttle and the car's barely accelerating. Or maybe you're driving a Miata and you're going through a fast corner and you're wide open.
Mr. Rains, could you take the cursor and go back to the beginning of the minimum speed of the red car? Right, the beginning of a little bit to the left, right where that green arrow point is. I know it's hard to put it right there, guys. So here is the minimum speed beginning of the red car, and look where it's at relative to the apex. So we're looking at the red dot on the track map, right? The red dot on the track map, and then think about where the apex is. That car is doing nothing from right there to the apex, which means I can brake later, I can go faster, I can do a little bit of both, I can divide that in the middle, I can choose one or the other. But basically, he's not working right there.
Yeah, nothing's happening right there. A little bit of throttle.
And the delta between these two cars right at the same spot on the track is 20 miles an hour difference. And I see that in the upper right, underneath Mr. Rains's green and red lights. Underneath there it says 80.33 and 59.41.
Yep.
So for some reason, our pro is going 20 miles an hour, and the red guy's going, man, I just need to put it on cruise control right here.
Yep. We got a really good question in the Q&A. And guys, if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A, because we're going to start wrapping up here. We try to keep these to about an hour, and we're right at the end, but you will get the recording of this whole session to go back and rewatch. So Byron says, U-shaped but not flat at the bottom. Got it. But then he said, what about the carousel at Road America? Wouldn't you be steady state on the throttle there for a while? So the carousel at Road America is a long radius, high-speed corner. I can't recall exactly the last time I was there how fast I was going there, but it's probably 80-plus miles per hour. I would imagine. Eric might know off the top of your head, but it's a very long 81, yeah. 83.2 was my min speed there. Yeah. It's Robbie Foley knows that kind of stuff. If I called Robbie right now, he'd be like, what car? And like, he could tell me for every car he's ever been there, what his minimum speed was, but it's a very long radius corner. So that my answer to that, Byron, is that you still are not going to have a flat speed trace there. You are going to be steady state on the throttle, but you're probably still going to have a U shape if you're doing it just right. It's still going to be a really big U shape. So think about it as that whole thing. You still want to only spend as little time as possible. Let's say the car has to make the corner go 80 miles per hour at a certain point to make the corner. You only want to spend as little amount of time as that 80 miles per hour as possible. So you're going to slow to 80 miles per hour all the way through the corner. You're going to get to 80 miles per hour and you're going to accelerate away from 80 miles per hour. How fast you slow to it and how fast you accelerate might be not fairly assertive because it's very, very long radius, but it's basically going to be a big U shape. It's not going to be flat though. If you see flat there, there's opportunity. If you see a flat speed trace there, there's opportunity. Awesome. Eric, is there anything else you want to touch on these fast corners?
The stuff we're doing right now, guys, is how you learn. if you're doing it on your own, it takes a long time. It's great when you buddy up with somebody, and if not, there's a lot of videos out there that you're just looking at this. It's fun and it's easy to have somebody tell you the answer, but the better way to do it is to stop and engage your brain, because once you figure it out sooner, all this stuff starts making sense really fast. It's best to get thrown in the pool than to learn to swim in the knee-deep kiddie pool and then waist-deep. Just freaking go all in. It's a lot easier, especially right now with the virus. There's plenty of time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, if you're sitting there at home going, hey, I knew most of this stuff, great, whatever, I would encourage you to still revisit it and practice, because this is a muscle that you really have to exercise. And there's even more that we can dig out of this information in the speed trace, but start thinking about telling a story. So let's wrap up a little bit with our U shape. We want to avoid a flat bottom at all costs. That's not good. If you see flat bottoms on your U shape fast speed traces, there's opportunity there. There's opportunity to do something differently. Usually in fast corners, it's not necessarily braking later, but it's braking less overall, using less force, maybe releasing the brake differently, maybe having a sooner end of brake. When we talk about EOB, end of braking, where do you release the brake pedal? Always ask yourself in a fast corner, especially in a fast corner, but really everywhere, especially in a fast corner, where do I come off the brake pedal? Where on the track? What definitive point on the track do I release the brake pedal? And many times you'll find in turn one at Sebring, if you trail brake into that thing and you release the brake, you're off the brake at the apex. That's too much. That's too much. That's too deep. That's too late into the corner. You're going 80 miles per hour. You don't want to still be on the brake pedal that deep in the corner, because that's going to keep the weight over the nose and the car is going to keep pointing in the direction of your steering input. It's going to keep going. So ask yourself in these fast corners, where is my end of braking? And many times if you feel like it's a sketchy corner, move your end of braking sooner, closer to turn in, and it's probably going to feel more comfortable. It's probably going to feel more comfortable.
I'm going to repeat what you said in a different way for the same reason. Guys, the best thing to do is to look and go and ask yourself, what am I doing? Not what should I be doing, but say, what am I doing? What do the lines say it's doing? And if we look at the blue one right down here, it says we're going to brakes, and then we're doing that hockey stick thing, right? And then somewhere there's the min speed in there. I'm waiting for Andrew to help me back me up here for the bottom, right? Right. So to the left of that, we got on the brakes and we feathered them off, right? The end in there's apex, and we got on the juice. That's what you're looking for, of what that line says. Screw if it's you or somebody else, right? What's going on? Where's that at? That's the first step. Not, am I doing it right? Is there more there? Because you got to know this part first. You got to know what you're looking at.
Yep, absolutely. So Byron, roundabout answer for your question. I saw Eric answered it as well. You are steady state throttle for a little while, but you're probably your goal is to squeeze to full throttle. So I would recommend, if you're going to just have to be at maintenance throttle for a whole lot of time, maybe delay your initial throttle application a little bit there. Excellent. Eric, I think we are running out of time here. I know I need to wrap it up and go. This will all be recorded, and I will send it to you in an email so you can check it out. Please feel free to respond to me in the email that I've been sending you, the emails I've been sending you to join the webinar. Please respond to me and let me know, first of all, what you got out of it. What did you learn? Did you meet your expectations? Second of all, let us know, hey, what do you want to learn more? What do we need to follow up with? I'll leave with a couple of Apex Pro related things, guys, as we wrap all this up. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we discussed here. If you subscribe to Lap Timer Plus, all these webinars are half off. And we're going to be doing even more Lap Timer Plus subscriber benefits coming up soon. There's going to be some announcements coming out pretty soon about some changes that are going to be made with that subscription model and what it looks like and the value that you get out of it. So stay tuned with that. It's going to offer even more value for stuff like this when we're getting together on these webinars, so we can have more learning take place and talk about more specific issues and identify more specific things in the data that's going to be even more relevant to you. So if you're not subscribing, this is the sales pitch. I would definitely recommend it. Take a look at that. That's the in-app purchase that's available on the home screen of the app. Eric, you have anything fun going on? I know there's not a whole lot going on in general.
Yeah, I would, this isn't a plug for revenue or anything, but go to the YouTube page, Instructor Summit. I do a ton of these same things and I break it down super, super easy. My goal is to help everybody get it, because once you start getting it, it's fun. When Rains and I can talk to you guys and you're getting it, man, it's a whole nother discussion and you just start finding stuff. But it's like you gotta learn how to crawl before you walk, and we're helping you do that before you run. So what you can do, please, what you can do, and my advice to you, is to go on YouTube and find as many of these in Apex Pro or Instructor Summit, or even the AIM stuff or the Matt Romanowski stuff. You can learn from different concepts. It's great. I'd spend more time with the Apex Pro if that's your device of choice, but all of that, the speed trace is all the same.
Yep, absolutely. The speed trace is universal amongst data systems. So I hope we covered stuff that was relevant to you guys. Please follow up and let me know if you have specific questions. I'd be happy to handle those offline. And if it seems like the feedback really helps, because like I said, we determined about this webinar in particular because everybody responded to the app deep dive webinar and said, hey, let's look at the speed trace. So hopefully we gave you some ideas for looking at your own data, and you're already looking at it going, I have a little more understanding. Eric's videos are awesome. He covers Apex Pro, Track Attack, AIM. He does a little bit of everything. I'll send you guys a link to his YouTube page. I'd recommend subscribing to that. It's free. It's just a YouTube channel. He's got great content on there, and that's just going to be another way that's going to help you look at your Apex Pro data in a different light.
It's a lot of repetition till it's habit, and then you're like, all of a sudden it'll click, boom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you'll be able to go, I know what to do now. First thing, you got to know what you're doing.
Absolutely. So that's step one. Like Eric said, identify what I am doing now. We talked a little bit about taking action from our data, about what we need to be doing differently. But really the first step is identify what am I doing, and knowing and being confident that you're doing that. And that we also, I'm going back to whoever said at the beginning that they want to get more better with confidence. Knowing what you're doing is the foundation for building confidence. Because if you don't know what you're doing and you go out and you try something else, I'm going to brake later. What if you were braking as late as the car can brake already? Right? What if you're braking too late and you're missing the apex? Right? You need to know what you're doing now before you take that next step. And we'll do a follow-up with this down the road and talk a little bit more about, I've identified this. I see I'm making a V on my speed trace in a corner where it should be a U. How do I go fix it? Or vice versa.
I got an offer for the first 2 people that send Andrew Rains an Apex profile. I'll do a review. I'll do a little review for you and walk you through your own data.
Wow.
My pleasure. I like helping people. First 2 people that send him a session, share a session with them. And that's share email session, Apex Pro data, if you know how to do that.
Absolutely. Boom. Bart, thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks everyone for hopping on and being a part of this. We certainly appreciate your support. Last thing I'll say is, support all your small businesses out there. We're one of them, and I greatly appreciate you guys being so supportive and jumping on board with these webinar series. It's really allowed me to spend a lot more time preparing and making sure that we deliver something really valuable to you. And I think it's really helpful in general to have these going. So thank you very much for your support. I'll send you a follow-up email. I'll send you Eric's info for his YouTube channel. If you follow up the first 2 people to send me Apex Pro sessions as an Apex session, Apex data session via email, Eric will do a data review for you, and I will send you a YouTube link to this recording sometime tomorrow. Sound good?
Be safe, everybody.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you very much.